know that, Val. So I wrote a story a while back. I think you perused it, but I never met a president, but I met someone who actually not only met presidents, but actually worked with them. Just like Captain McCormick said, it's one thing to see all the talking points and Joe Biden with it. I can just see it as two little handlers following him everywhere he goes. It's just an embarrassment, Val. Side note, I'm digressing, but I was very blessed in the auto industry. As you know, I worked a number of years, over 30 years in management in the auto industry, including in finance, as a finance manager. Any F&I guys out there, any finance guys will know processing a car deal is a really intimate thing. You do all the paperwork. When I left the industry a few years ago and retired, there were something like 34 signatures just to buy a car. Don't you love it? I said, you buy a car with a Post-it note and 3 signatures, like our grandparents or great-grandparents used to do. So, and I still think you can. So, digressing once again, because of the finance guy thing career, I got to meet some really cool people and got to know, some really, really cool people. I counted over 25,000 car deals in my career. And all you finance guys who were in the business 20, 30 years, do count, you'll see there's tens of thousands of folks. And not only just saying hello to them, I'm talking an intimate business situation where you're talking credit, you're talking net worth, you're talking payments, you're talking cars and licensing and all that stuff. It's a very complex thing. And I had the pleasure when I was in Toyota with Toyota, and this is years ago, I met with a gentleman who was he was a NASA executive. And he was based out of, goodness gracious, you ready for this, Val? Cape Canaveral, Florida. Hello? And the surrounding towns. I won't get into any details, but it was really fun because I met with him for kind of like James is talking about his old war stories. I met with this gentleman for a couple of hours, Val. And he said, just like James just said, oh, by the way, I knew some presidents. I said, well, wait, stop right there, right? Let's stop the car deal right there, right? Like you would do, Val.
Yeah.
And so can you talk about that a little bit? And he said, oh, yeah, I can talk about all of them. I said, what do you mean talk about all of them? He said, well, go from the beginning. This guy was a very high-end guy at NASA. He was one of, I'm talking out of turn. I don't know if he was a founder. I don't know if he was a high-end executive. All I know is he knew all the presidents going back to JFK. John F. Kennedy was the first one. And I said, okay, tell me about them. And he took some time and he told me about each one. And it was quick. I did publish it. And it's a really quick nutshell, but I'll kind of go, I'm sorry about the sound. I'll kind of go through what he said because I was fascinated. And once again, learn more by reading Greg Meakin stuff, Val. But I'll go through the list because I remember him verbatim. I remember this guy. He was really cool, really nice guy. He was I'm guessing he was in his 50s. Anyhow, he had said, John F. Kennedy, nicest guy you'll ever meet. He says he feels he was a total patriot, American. JFK right now in 2023 would be a Republican, no question. Anyhow, long story short on that one. But he said JFK, he had some real skeletons and issues, mainly on the female end, but no one cared. And no one cared. And I think rightly so, no one should care unless it's obviously crossing the line of presidential responsibility. He won't go into that. But he said JFK, real nice guy. And he said, this NASA guy said he'd vote for JFK in a second. He said Richard Nixon. And again, he not only he worked with him. Nixon, he described him as a little creepy. Nice guy, smart guy. The underestimated thing about Nixon is how smart he was. And also, I think the underestimated thing about Nixon was how personable he was, because I'm hearing from multi-sources that he was a pretty personal guy, pretty nice guy. Then he went to, so that was Nixon. I'll talk about Bill Clinton in a second. Hold on. Oh, George W.
Creepy? What does that mean?
Well, secretive. He's a Capricorn. Capricorns come off as secretive, a little bit creepy, and then he always seemed to have either secrets or something he was hiding. And again, this is this gentleman's opinion. It's just his opinion, but again, he worked with him. Like James McCormick said, it's not just a sit-down fundraiser. James McCormick was personally invited by Donald J. Trump to New Hampshire, Val, and met with him by invitation in a private office. And Karl Rove babysat James McCormick's sons, kids, while he was meeting with President Trump. So in this case, the NASA guy's case, although it's his opinion, I'll take his word for it, right? And he said, additional to Nixon, he said Reagan. Oh, by the way, Carter. I'll go in order here. Goodness gracious, Carter. Nicest guy in the world, smart guy. He was a speed reader. He could read over 100, whatever, incredible. Smart guy, almost genius. Too nice a guy to be president. Was not qualified to be president. Much like we see with Biden. He says everybody knew and everybody said Carter was just a nice guy, probably too nice a guy. I mean, he was a speed reader. Carter was a really nice guy. And again, Habitat for Humanity and his building houses. He's a great guy. But he was basically saying he should have never been president. Okay, next. We go to George Bush Sr. This is the gentleman, Bush Sr., who I believe this gentleman knew the best. Just to digress, Ronald Reagan, he said, no matter what, Reagan was the guy this guy liked the most. He said, this guy just lit up a room. When he walked in, just lit up a room. You wanted him to be the leader, the captain. I'm sure his Hollywood had a lot to do with it, but he said, no, this is a really, really nice guy. No question whatsoever. Reagan was this guy's favorite president. But Bush Sr., and this was interesting, I think he worked really closely, my NASA executive, with Bush Sr. And I heard from more than one source that when Bush Sr. ordered the original that James fought in Desert Shield and then Desert Sword, the invasion of Iraq to Kuwait and then to free Kuwait via Iraq. When George Bush Sr. pulled the trigger on that as far as orders, as James says, because Bush Sr. had personal experience with war. And he also was CIA director, which says more than you'll ever know. But Bush Sr. Called the order. And it's a true story, Val.